Welcome to the first in a short series of videos by the Village Fabric Shop to help you learn how to quilt in quarantine. Today you're going to do a little scavenger hunt around the house for some of the materials that you will need and tools. None of it's terribly complicated, but there are some things you need to know about. Okay, first and most obvious, if you're going to sew, you're going to need thread, preferably 100% cotton and preferably a neutral color. You're going to need a couple of sewing needles, and you're going to need about a half dozen or so pins. I keep it all together in this little sewing kit. It helps to have that all together. You're also going to need a pair of scissors. These are like a 4-inch blade. They're Fiskars. They're new. And that's important because old scissors won't cut through fabric well. And most people that do a lot of sewing and patchwork keep a pair or two of scissors that they only use for fabric. Okay? If you can do that, terrific. If not, use the best scissors you can lay your hands on. You're going to need preferably a mechanical pencil, but if not, a regular pencil that has a very good sharp point on it, and you'll need to resharpen it a lot. If your fabrics end up being dark colors, you're going to need a sliver of soap. Those old dried bits, they make wonderful sharp lines on dark colored fabrics if you can't see the pencil lines. Okay, and lastly, I'm going to show you how to make templates. This one is a 2-inch square, and you're also going to need one that is a 6-inch square. The 2-inch square one you can make out of a coffee can or deli cup lid. The larger one we're not going to use as many times. It's a 6-inch square, and you're going to cut that out of an old file folder, a piece of a cereal box, or its cracker box, something like that. You're going to need both of those. Okay? All of that stuff, you should have a bag or a box to keep it in. You can see this one was reused. This is just a piece of paper showing you to draw and use a 2-inch square for one of the templates, the plastic one, and a 6-inch square for the other. Use a ruler. Be as exact as you can. Measure 2 inches from the corner, 2 inches from the corner, 2 inches from the corner. Make your dots. Draw the line. And then check the other direction. 2 inches from the corner, 2 inches from the corner, 2 inches from the corner. Draw the line. Now you can trace that to your plastic for your template. You're going to do the same process to get your 6-inch square as exact as you can. This happens to be a 6-inch ruler, so it's very easy. Lay it on the edge, draw a little dot, line it up. Okay, loose leaf paper makes it really easy to keep your ruler straight. Make a little dot, make a little dot. Connect the dots, draw the line, check the other direction at least 3 times, draw the line. Now you have your perfect squares that you can then make your templates with. Okay, the last thing that we need is fabric, and that's probably the most fun part of the whole thing. We're going to be making a 9-patch block. Okay, so called because it's made of 9 squares. Those squares, most often you see in this checkerboard kind of arrangement with 2 fabrics. Okay, with the dark ones in the center and the corners, and then the lighter ones in the leftover places. And that's true no matter if the darkest one is not that dark. As long as it's the darkest one, that's how that goes. If you have quilters cottons, those are the easiest to work with. By all means, use those. That is probably what I'm going to do because I have lots of them and scraps that are the right sizes. Those are some light colored fabrics. These are some medium colored fabrics. And because I have them and I like it, I'm probably going to add a few dark colored fabrics. And if I do that, I'm going to put the darkest, that dark purple fabric, right there in the center square. So you know what you need to gather up. You will need a couple bigger pieces of the light fabric. You're going to need 4 pieces of that are bigger than that 6-inch square template you made. So this piece, I could get 2 of these. I'll need to find 2 more, like big pieces. And the last thing you're going to need is a really large piece that is about 20 inches square to be the back of the project. I have not decided yet what fabric I will use for that back. I have actually a nice gray bed sheet that might work. But I don't have to make that decision immediately. If you're cutting from shirts, however, you might want to remember that and leave the back of the shirt in a nice big chunk so that you have matching fabric for the back part of the project. And that is what you need. We'll see you in the next video. Welcome to the second part of preparations for the Learn to Quilt in Quarantine project from the Village Fabric Shop. Now that you have your materials gathered and your templates made, we're ready to get tracing and cutting. You can see there's my small 2-inch square template. Here is my large 6-inch square template. And just for the sake of clarity, I have traced out my smaller square into the larger square. You can see it fits 9 times perfectly. And that way you have a little bit of an idea of how the geometry is going to work. If you have graph paper available and you want to do some coloring, you can easily follow the lines and draw the grid. 9 boxes, plain box, 9 boxes, okay? And play with some coloring if you want to get a deeper understanding of how the geometry works and how your colors are going to work. You can play with colored pencils if you want to. A plan like that can help you keep track of what to sew together in what order if you have a lot of fabrics. So it's not a bad habit to start if you're going to do a lot of quilting. You need to trace and cut out from your chosen fabrics a whole mess of those small squares. Okay, you want to keep them sorted and piled neatly. Now, if you have 3 fabrics, the darks and mediums are going to be a little bit different. Either way, you're going to do 20 of your lightest fabric. And you can see I've traced and cut out. And I have them in a nice pile. 20 of the lightest. If you have a dark and a medium, you will need 20 of your medium and 5 of your dark. If you only have 1 fabric for dark and medium, which is fine, then you will need 25 of those. And you see I have them nice, neat, stacked right there. Now when you're putting this all together finally, you will also need 4 of your lightest fabric in the larger size square. But we're not going to work with those right away. But the reason I'm telling you about them now is so that you can reserve big enough pieces of fabric if you need to do so. So I'm going to move that out of the way. And I'm going to bring in a scrap of fabric. Okay, this is a light. And my 2-inch square template. And I'm going to show you how to trace, because you do need to leave a seam allowance. Okay. You don't need to cut your big piece for the backing either right now. But again, you want to keep that in mind so that you reserve a piece that's big enough. You need about 20 inches square. You don't want to accidentally cut out from that and then be short on that huge piece. Okay. You're going to use your mechanical pencil, especially on the light. If you don't have one of these, again, use a regular pencil with a really sharp point. If you use a dull regular pencil, the line's going to get thicker and it's going to be harder to be accurate. Okay, if your fabric is too dark for a pencil, you can use this soap sliver. I'm just going to draw a little bit in the seam allowance. It's a little crumbly sometimes, but you can see it makes a line. So if you need to see on a darker fabric, okay, you want to be sure to be as exact as you can, and you want to make sure that the corners are really clear. Okay, which means when you trace, you're going to go a little bit past each corner, just so you have like a crosshairs. Okay, you also need to leave what's called a seam allowance. The line you're tracing is your sewing line, and you need fabric on both sides of that sewing line so that the piece doesn't fall apart. If you try to sew really right at the edge, even if you get the needle through it cleanly, it's going to fray and pull apart. So you need space outside your sewing line. The standard for quilters nowadays is a 1/4 inch of space. So the distance between here and here needs to be at least a 1/4 inch. When quilters rotary cut, they use 1/4 inch because it makes the math easy, and it's a good size for security, but it doesn't waste too much fabric. So I've got at least a 1/4 inch on these two sides where it's close by the edge. And notice I'm dragging the pencil along, and I've gone a little past. I'm going to lean it the other way and go a little past. Without moving the template, I'm going to do all 4 sides. Okay. Okay, and I'm trying not to let my fabric move too much. That gives you very exact, and it gives you a little crosshair at each corner that you can then use when we're stitching, so your work is nice and exact. Okay, now you want to leave a 1/2 inch between the first piece and the second piece that you trace. Well, do you have to measure it? Well, if you really want to get a ruler out and do that, you can. But for most adults that are doing this, the width of your pinky, right about where the nail is in and around and close enough to a 1/2 inch that we can use that as a measure. If you're a kid and your hands aren't full size yet, check and see on a ruler which finger is closest and use that. So there's my pinky finger, width of approximately. I'm going to hold my template down. I'm going to trace again. Oops. Go a little past. I'm dragging it, go a little past. Doesn't have to be a lot passed, just a little, even a couple of threads, as long as you can see it. This is a much more efficient way for when it's time to sew. Okay, I'm going to put one more on this piece of fabric. Click up my lid a little bit. There. And there. There. Oops. I know it's hard to see this bit right there, but so there's 3 of them ready to be cut out. I'm going to trace out all of the ones that I need. I'm going to put my template safely away and get my fabric scissors. Remember, we talked about them needing to be sharp. Okay? You're going to know really quickly if they're not sharp, because it's going to be hard to cut your fabric. I'm going to not cut on the lines, and that's the hardest thing for a lot of people to remember. You're cutting outside the lines. Okay, about a 1/4 inch if there's no other shapes out there. When you've got 2 shapes next to each other, be sure you cut down the middle of that space. And then you have a piece that's ready to go. And the next piece that's ready to go. If you have like this, where there's a lot of fabric there, but not enough for another shape, you can trim it off, leave around a 1/4 inch. This piece and this piece will go in the garbage. So that's, again, you need 20 of your lightest fabric. You need 20 of your mediums, traced and cut, and 5 of the darkest. Now this dark one here, I used a marker so you might have a chance to see the lines, although that's not real good practice. In reality, I would have used, if it was just me doing it for me, I still would have used my mechanical pencil, but it didn't show on camera at all. So anyway, if you don't have 3 fabrics and you only have 2, then make 25 of the medium or dark and 20 of the lights. And your 4 large ones, 6-inch ones, okay, same exact process, just a lot bigger, 9 times bigger to be exact. Okay, that's 4 of them. In the next video, we will start sewing.